When most people think of Nickelodeon, there are a select few TV shows that will generally come to mind, with the most obvious being SpongeBob SquarePants. But another one of their more iconic shows is actually the one that started it all, which was Rugrats. The tales of babies trying to figure out the world around them, and often being cute but wildly inaccurate in how they perceive things, was so popular that it aired for about 10 years before finally running its course and being cancelled in favor of the aforementioned Little Yellow Sponge. But its popularity was such that it not only got a couple of spin-off shows and a reboot, but the titular babies also found their way to the big screen a total of 3 times. And today, I'd like to go over all 3 Rugrats movies and would like to rank how good I personally felt each one was. Now, as per usual, there will be spoilers ahead, so if for any reason you don't want any of these movies ruined, you should probably come back to this video another day. And let me just also note that to make things easier, I'll be looking at these movies in the order they were released and giving my personal opinions on each one, and am not going in the order I'd personally rank them. Okay, so with all of that being said, the first one to look at would simply be the Rugrats movie, which famously introduced Tommy's little brother Dill and focuses on how he comes to grips with being a big brother, which is made worse when he and his friends end up lost in the woods with circus monkeys and a hungry wolf after them. Now let me just say, as the big movie made in response to a popular TV show, this movie certainly fires on all cylinders, upping the stakes higher than they ever were before, as well as the emotional core running deeper than it ever did in the series. But that being said, it goes perhaps a little too far in some places, especially once they get lost in the woods. I mean, the very real threats they face, the extremely relatable fear of the adults searching for them, the psychological torture the babies go through as things get worse, that's all pretty heavy stuff for a kids movie, and might be a bit too much for the younger ones at that. As well as easily paranoid parents, honestly. But to its credit, though it's pretty dark by Rugrats standards, it does also manage to be pretty funny, so there is that. In the end, I'd say this movie does a great job at being a big, important movie for the cartoon, and its humor is pretty on point, but it didn't have to go quite as dark as it ended up going. Then next we have Rugrats in Paris, and I'm just going to outright say it. I think this movie was the best of the 3. It took all of the best components of the original movie, as well as ironed out its flaws, and made a movie that serves as arguably the perfect cinematic outing for the Rugrats. Having an emotional center in the form of Chucky wanting a mother, high stakes in the form of a child-hating villain trying to marry Chucky's father, having plenty of great comedy, and keeping things a lot lighter, this movie manages to get it all right. Heck, even the climax, which should sound absolutely ridiculous on paper, not only makes for a pretty thrilling ending, but also works as the perfect parody of giant monsters fighting each other movies. Again, there's a million reasons why it shouldn't work, but for some reason it just does. Especially because it's intercut with the wedding, which is easily the funniest scene in the entire movie. So the point here is, at least in my opinion, Rugrats in Paris is the best representation of what a Rugrats movie should look like, and perfectly lives up to the idea of being the Rugrats on the big screen. And finally, there's Rugrats Go Wild. Now, while there are many who hate this movie, I personally feel there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but as far as being a crossover of Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys, it all works pretty well, especially when it comes to the interactions between the different characters. I mean, maybe Nigel acting like a baby was a bit much, and maybe some of the humor doesn't land, but on the whole, this movie works best as a crossover, especially because it dedicates so much time in the beginning to making the meeting of the two groups believable. Again, as separate Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys movies, it might not be the greatest, but as a crossover, it does pretty well. Besides, when else are you ever going to get to see Spike with the voice of Bruce Willis? Seriously, animated movies can be rather infamous for their out of left field casting, but that might just take the cake, especially because in the end, it works surprisingly well. But either way, as I just said, Rugrats Go Wild is a crossover first and everything else second, and as a crossover is its biggest strength. But again, as a Rugrats movie, it's definitely not the greatest. In my opinion, that has to go to Rugrats in Paris. Alright, I think that pretty much wraps up this video. So now I want to hear what you guys think. Which movie do you believe was the Rugrats' best cinematic outing? And how does it compare to the ranking of the movies that I just did? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. Because like I always say, you don't have to agree with any opinions expressed in this video. You're entitled to your own opinions, and if you think that everything I said is completely backwards, that's absolutely fine. And thank you all for watching. It is all very much appreciated. And I hope to see you all next time.